My name is Shen, and you're listening to my very first podcast. I was born in a small city in the Henan province of China. Over there, one of my fondest memories is biking. I started biking to school when I was 10 years old, and in China, this was nothing out of the ordinary. There were many bikers on the road, and my classmates were doing the same. I was an active child who loved biking because it was a fun and efficient way to get to places. I was skinny but strong, and can count on one hand the number of times I got sick. There was one small clinic by the side of the small street leading to the main road out of the community, and I remember going there to get medication when I came down with a cold or fever, which was rare. In the fall of 2007, my parents and I moved to the United States. My father had accepted a research position at a hospital in Boston, and we tagged along with him to a new life here in America. We took some time to settle in, and everything seemed to be going well until I came down with a cold in the winter of 2009. My family and I all thought it was going to be nothing other than the typical cold, but slowly we realized that this was not the case. It lasted over 2 weeks, and in these 2 weeks I suffered some strange symptoms that we had no explanations for. Things like headaches, stomach aches, and back pain so bad I couldn't sleep at night. Eventually, my dad took me to the hospital. And at first, doctors could not figure out what was going on, even after many tests and blood work were done. Finally, an MRI led them to the diagnosis: Takayasu arteritis. It was a disease that affected the major blood arteries in my body. My body was basically attacking itself. Treatments began immediately. In the beginning, I had to stay overnight in the hospital so that I can stay for observation after the chemotherapy was done. During the stay, I was hooked to an IV drip at all times, and I would haul it behind me whenever I had to move around. It didn't take long for my disease to take over a big part of my life. In addition to seeing rheumatologists regularly for treatment, I had to go to the hospital every 2 weeks for blood work. On top of that, I had to go see the eye doctor regularly and the kidney doctor. For the best overall treatment of my disease, I had to keep track of my general well-being with these specialists because of the complexity of the sickness itself. In the first couple years after the diagnosis, I had flare-ups almost regularly. This meant that my blood work would show inflammation markers that were off the charts. I would then have to come into the hospital ASAP to stay for a few days until I was a little more stable. During the initial flare-ups, I often felt indignant about everything. Why does this have to happen to me? I'm a good person. I ate a healthy diet. I've never gotten this sick before. I really hoped that it would go away soon. Not too long after I was diagnosed, I found out that it was going to be a chronic condition. I did some research by myself on the internet and found out that depending on the case, the disease itself can either be very manageable or deadly. At the same time, I was told by my doctor that it may never completely go away. I'll probably never be cured, so to speak. It may have to be something I have to deal with for the rest of my life. I took some time to process this, and again I questioned why I had to be the bearer of all this burden. I was 14 years old at the time of diagnosis, and I struggled with this idea of a chronic illness coupled with regular doctor's appointments and an array of medication I have to take daily. I can't pinpoint the exact moment that my mindset changed, but Somewhere along the way, in between those flare ups and doctor's appointments, I found a new sense of peace. I've come to realize that I am strong, I am okay, I am resilient. My body, after all it's gone through, is still here. Looking back, I remember how difficult it was to accept this new norm, this new life of taking medications, watching what I eat, running around in between doctor's appointments, getting all sorts of tests and exams done on a regular basis, all the while still doing well in school. I would be lying if I said it didn't take a toll on my mental health. So then I started to wonder how my parents dealt with it. My dad was the one consistently going to doctor's appointments with me and staying in the hospital overnight with me when needed. And being a medical research doctor, he easily grasped the concepts and the workings of my disease as told by my own rheumatologist. My mom, though, rarely came with me to appointments. She didn't speak English, and it was the main reason she didn't come. And I've never really spoken to her about my disease in depth, especially after my parents moved back to China a few years ago. So I decided to interview her to see what her experience was like.
Please wait while we connect your call.
喂，妈，你给我说一
Tell
下
me
你自己的
about
感
your
受。我生病的
experience
时候，
with
你的
it,
感
with
受。
my disease.
How do I put this into words? So, my experience is basically I always have a nagging feeling about your disease. The longer it stays this way, the longer it's not cured. I don't know if it will be cured. Well, when you first got sick, I've always thought that over there I didn't take good care of you. When you got that cold, and then after the cold it became this disease. I was worried about whether it will ever get cured or go away. And I kept thinking if we were back home in China, I would have taken you to the hospital right away, and it definitely would have turned out better. Maybe you wouldn't be this sick today. That's what I thought back then when you got sick.
I feel like even if I was in China, if this was still to happen, I don't think you could have stopped it. You couldn't have done anything to prevent it.
And then afterwards, ever since then, you've been taking those meds. Every day now, when I'm not busy and I think of you and your disease, I just wonder about how you're doing. And you know, every time we talk on the phone, I would ask you about your disease, whether your medication dose has been decreased or whether you're better. Being healthy is better than anything in the world. This disease, you were so young. Every time I think about it, I feel terrible. That disease, I would have never thought that would happen to you. I've never even heard of it. Who knows what caused it? It can't be malnutrition. I mean, even 10 years ago, our family's financial situation wasn't bad. It couldn't have been anything related to malnutrition. I don't know why it happened, why you got this disease.
I don't know either, but it's like sometimes when you get sick, there's no reason for it. There's no cause behind it. The human body is so complex. If you got sick, you got sick.
I mean, if you got better, that would be great. Whatever disease it is, if you can just take some meds and it gets better, that would have been fine. But every time I think about it, maybe you'll have to take the meds for the rest of your life?
Remember when I used to have those flare-ups? How once in a while I would have to go into the hospital to get treatment for a few days straight? That doesn't happen anymore, you know? It's just a regular treatment and blood work that has to get done.
I feel like it's the type of disease that elderly people would get. You are so little. It's been so many years, and I don't even know if you will get better at all. This disease, I feel like, how are we so unlucky? Why did we have to be the ones to deal with this?
Ma, don't worry. Right now I'm doing pretty good. I feel pretty normal. I can do anything I want, and there's no restrictions as to what I can do in my life. And for the first few years, I also felt very unlucky, but now I've accepted it. I haven't felt unhappy about it for a long time. I mean, that was just part of my life. I just have to deal with it.
Right. Whatever obstacle comes in front of us, you'll have to face it. Don't think about it too much. But sometimes I think too much, so being a parent, feeling like as long as your kid is healthy, even if we don't wear good clothes or like we don't eat like a king, as long as you have your health, I'm content. I don't want anything else as long as you're healthy.
I mean, I've already accepted it. It might not ever completely go away, but my doctors are always working to taper down my medication or increase the time intervals that I receive the treatments. It's not like I feel like it's a burden anymore. I've accepted it. I'm not even worried, so don't you worry.
You'll get better. Every family has obstacles that they deal with. Whatever it is, I mean, whatever comes your way, the only way to deal with it is to accept it. But I feel restless sometimes, and just feel there are things that are very hard for me to accept. But slowly, I think I'm trying to worry less. I think I'm better at it now. You'll get better.